NSJT. No secrets, just truth. Jazrel Cavon. I started studying religion probably about 15 years ago, and my thirst for knowledge took me through Buddhism, Hinduism, the Kabbalah, uh, Baha'i, different religions, and I studied the Quran. And as most people know me, they know me as a poet, street poet. Um, I love writing. Writing is everything to me. But what's more important to me is speaking out. I started speaking out when I was about 15 about the things that I saw, the things that were going on around me, and I began to pray for wisdom. And when I began to pray for wisdom, I began to see the world around me begin to unravel. I began to understand that it wasn't just me, that things were going on all around me, that people were suffering, people were hurt, people needed someone to comfort them, they needed someone to love them, they needed a greater sense of joy than what they had. So I began to spend my life building up the necessary tools to be able not only to tackle my issues, but to be able to tackle issues around me. I became a great debater, and I thank my uncle for that. My uncle was a very wise man. He is a very wise man. And we would always debate politics and religion and any subject. We would just debate it. And inside me was a fire to continue on debating, continue on being an advocate for those who didn't have a voice, advocate for the motherless, the fatherless, advocate for the children who were coming from homes that was abusive. Um, and I can understand that because I was abused growing up. I spent 14 years of my life locked away, being abused constantly every day. Um, and yet, for me, when I got on my own, it was a thirst to reward those who did the simple acts of kindness. I wanted them to know that they had took a part of their time to create something amazing, a moment in which that we shared that was beyond a description of words. And people kept saying I was different. They kept saying, you're different than everyone else. And I kept saying, no, my goal is to be normal. Little did I know my life would never be normal. Little did I know that I would be facing so much in such a little time of my life. I had prayed constantly that I would be able to overcome the things that burdened me. And to be honest, I'm still dealing with them. I'm still dealing with the pain and the anguish of what I went through growing up. A part of me understands that it wasn't my fault. A part of me understands that it was going to happen. And there was nothing I could do to stop what was going to happen. I watched my sister grow from a fragile young woman into a very powerful woman. I watched myself grow up from a scared little boy to a very outspoken man. I look at my life as an evolving moment, an evolving expression of thought. It took me a while to understand what certain things were because I was locked away for 14 years. It was hard for me to start relationships with others and friendships and romantic relationships because they couldn't understand that for me I was sheltered. I was deprived the basics in communication skills, the basics in cooperating. I shared, I learned how to share, but there was still so much a part of me that was selfish. And the part of me that was selfish was my story. It was my upbringing. It was everything that made me who I was. That story was a powerful story to me, and it was very rare to be able to find anyone else with the same exact story. But as I began to tell my story, the the people around me rallied and wanted to hear more, wanted to know more. They wanted to dive more into who I was, who I am, and who I see myself to be in the future. I had one of the loves of my life tell me that what am I going to do when I'm done fighting my past? And it was a very powerful question. And now I know the answer. I will never be done fighting my past because there were so many who knew what was going on with me around me and allowed those things to continue to happen. That I made a covenant with God, a vow with God, that I will never allow that same type of blind ignorance to be a part of my life. I will never allow someone to go through something alone, that I would stand with them and be with them throughout whatever it is that they're going through. I began to understand that every book I've read and everything I have studied led me to believe that there is hope, that there is a power greater than any power known to man, and that is the power of our will, the power of our strength, that God endows us with enough strength to overcome our situation. He gives us power and strength to defend ourselves against our enemy. As I said, I was a poet, and I love poetry, and I love looking at the world in such a beautiful manner that when it pours out into a page, it reminds me of being in the grace and presence of God. I wanted to be much more than a great man or a good man. I wanted to be something that I could be proud of at the end of my life, something I could tell the angels about at the end of my life, something that I could face God with and say, look, what I've done with what you have given me. I have taken what was sour and turned it into something sweet. I've taken something that was dead and gave life to it. I wanted to be able to say that I healed not only my heart, but the hearts of others. I began believing that I could construct a life that will protect me, but also give the access needed for everyone to understand my point of view. I realized going through life angry was not going to cut it. Going through life feeling sorry for myself was not going to cut it. Going through life afraid was not going to cut it. That I was going to have to dig deep and find strength somewhere inside of me. I was going to have to dig deep and find love somewhere inside of me to defend. I began wearing my heart on my sleeve because I did not believe that I was going to be taken advantage of, but that I was going to use that power to dash all those enemies, the doubters, the critics, to pieces. To me, my heart is that rod, that staff that crush all things to pottery pieces. There has been only a few times that I've ever fallen in love in my life. But when I have to choose between love and what I do for a living, what I do for a living is more important than love. What I do for a living is more important than joy. What I do for a living is more important than receiving rewards or accolades or putting me on a pedestal. What I do for a living is open mind. What I do for a living is change hearts, free souls. I begin to arm those who didn't know that they could fight back with such power. My story is an improbable story, a story of how I got here. And that story, for me, is one that I still feel nervous about telling. It's not because I feel ashamed. It's not because I feel lost. It's not because I feel lonely. Because I do not. It is because my story is long. My story reveals the scars of my heart. My story is a story meant for those who have gone through and is going through. My story is to remind those who doubt themselves to never doubt themselves. Those who have not yet been inspired to be inspired. Jazrel Cavon means more than anything else in my life. It is not just my name, but the definition of my name. Jazrel means God sows, which means that everything that I do is like a tiny seed that I sow and hope that it grows into a beautiful and fruitful tree. I've come eye to eye to the enemy, stood before his presence, and denied his power. Denied him the ability to control my life. Denied him the ability to control my friends and my family's lives. I know it is my duty to stand first when no one else refuses to stand. I know it's my duty to speak the truth when no one else has the courage to do it. I am a man of great strength and great ability. And I understand that with great power comes great responsibility. I know that I must do more than what my forefathers have done. I must do more than what my ancestors have done. I'm a mixed breed. I'm half African American and half Caribbean. I was raised Caribbean. I was raised to look at the world with cynicism, with doubt. I was raised to see the flaws of people, see the flaws of the kingdom, see the flaws of the earth. I was raised to study not just one subject, but study them all, because they all equal out to the same thing: knowledge of life, wisdom of life. I was taught that if I heard a story, that in that story, in that context, there is something in there for me to save my life, to save face, to give me purpose, to add to my cause. So I say to you that who I am is great strength, great power, great belief in the God who created me. He who has not created me cannot destroy me. I believe wholeheartedly that my work is not done, that there's much more for me to do. That is what is on my heart now. And I hope and pray that you understand that these messages is meant to inspire, give hope, and comfort. I love you.